Boeing is set to resume contract negotiations with the 30,000 union workers on strike this week. A prolonged strike could push the company's debt into junk territory. Joining us now with more on this is Eric Dezenhall, Dezenhall Resources chairman. And Eric, you've seen a lot of messes, but this one must be near the top of the bunch. It's kind of mind-blowing to think of this great pride that we take in Boeing and this American manufacturing to see what has happened to this company. What do you do if you're the brand new CEO who's maybe a month into the job on this?
Well, they're fighting for the viability of the company. No workforce, no company. And the CFO has said as much, that settling the strike has to be the top priority. But that doesn't mean it's the whole priority. I mean, you're dealing with cascading failures here, safety, financial, labor, cost of living, regulatory challenges. But the first has to be labor. But I can't imagine that at a higher strategic level, they're not having discussions about do they merge, do they sell, do they declare bankruptcy, because no single resolving one of these problems solves the broader cluster.
If that's the case, if there are actual conversations, and we don't know this, we're on the outside, but if there are actual conversations, which are not unreasonable conversations, given what we see is the situation there, is this a company that's too big to fail? I can't imagine America without Boeing.
I think that's right. I mean, if we have seen anything in the last decade and a half or so, we have seen the too big to fail phenomenon. It's hard for me to imagine symbolically that this administration or any administration is going to let them vanish from the planet, especially to be acquired by a foreign manufacturer. There's a lot of problems there. So again, I have no evidence. I'm not on the inside, but I can't believe those talks are not being held at different levels. But again, if you don't have a workforce, how do you convince anybody you have a company worth saving?
Okay, but if you have a workforce that wants its pension brought back and clearly is looking for higher wages, I don't know how the original package went through, 25% over 4 years, why the union leadership would agree to that when clearly 96% of their members were not on board with that idea. Washington being involved at this stake would seem like at this point would seem like a pretty easy answer too, that there would be questions that would be asked because, again, I can't imagine we allow Boeing to go away.
Well, that's right. I mean, the thing about crisis management is there's things that the world sees and there's things that the world doesn't see. I have found when I am on the inside of something like this, and I'm not on this one, you have this iceberg where the things that really matter are happening where nobody can see. Discussions with banks, discussions with regulators, discussions with unions, and we're all sitting here on the outside reading statements as if the external communications are what is pivotal in this situation. And look, it's not unimportant, but these crises are not resolved by external communications. They're resolved by something more fundamental and happening internal and at a very high level.
These problems were not just years in the making. I would say over a decade in the making. You go back the last couple of CEOs and maybe point some fingers with some of these things. What's the solution? What would you be telling people inside the room right now? How do you fix things? How do you get things back on target, starting with the union?
Well, it's a one at a time thing. It is not that there is a central narrative that solves everything. Again, you are looking at failures on a constant level. I mean, if you talk to people inside the industry, they will tell you that a lot of this comes down to rather than becoming a plane company, an airplane company, becoming a financial, a quarterly company. And you know, whenever I do one of these interviews, I'm inundated with emails about what really caused all of this. And a lot of these people really do know what they're talking about. But it is not the kind of thing that you have a meeting and say, OK, here is the one central strategy when you have all of these variables coming at you in real time. It's not unlike a military situation where you could talk strategy all you want. But if you have the Visigoths at the gates, you've got to deal with them.